This time we'll draw up a design that mimics the main menu of Traffic Department. We'll spend a few minutes looking at how the original game handles the menu, and then review the graphics assets that we have to work with. We'll sketch out a design that uses 3 Game Maker objects and a simple approach to animation that's a bit more expensive than color cycling used by the real game. We left the last video with an ongoing issue where our text wasn't properly spaced. Now I showed you the mistake during editing and I went back and corrected it. We'll see the corrected version the next time we go into Game Maker, which will probably be in the next programming video. Let's go to our design document. Now as we know, the main menu falls here in the game flow, but this isn't the whole story. We need to enhance this part of the drawing, so let's take it to a new slide. Now this slide will focus on the main menu flow and object interactions. So while it's true that the main menu room leads directly to the briefing room, we have some control decisions to make now that specify which briefing to go to. The game includes 59 possible briefings, and the player has a choice at the main menu whether to go to Mission 1 by starting a new game, or going to another mission available by choosing Next Mission or loading a game. So in the main menu, there's a decision fork. Now, as I said, the player also has the option of loading or saving the game. Note that this pattern here looks an awful lot like the pattern we saw in the introduction, where the object in charge creates a new object and passes control briefly while the player interacts. We'll keep that idea around this time too. Let's identify the Game Maker objects we'll use to support our design. Now our primary object in this scene will be OBJ main menu. It drives the player through the scene and handles most of the display and input processing. Now I also hinted that we'll use a child object to handle loading and saving. I'll call it object load save. Now there's another interaction that the player has to have at the main menu. Sometimes there are pop-ups that warn the player if something they're about to do will disrupt the game. A pop-up warns the player if they're about to load or start a new game when there's a game already in progress. Also, if the player is trying to quit, we'll handle that object with pop-up. When this pop-up object is active, it will block interaction with everything else. There's one more subtle interaction that the player won't see. We've already created a game scope object that holds important data like current game being played. Now our main menu will update that current mission based on the player's actions. Also, the load and save object will push and pull save game data as required. Let's focus on the main menu object. We'll start by taking a closer look at the sprite. Now when we extracted this sprite object, we discussed briefly that the main menu selection and animations in the original game were done using color cycling. Notice each main menu option has a color that's unique across the sprite, which is manipulated at runtime by shifting the palette of these colors. Well, we're not going to use that technique. Now instead, we're going to add an alpha channel to the image and remove all main menu selection colors. And then we'll draw backlights behind the image that'll be visible through the sprite. We'll set that up when we import the sprite next time. For now, let's copy this to our design document. This is the graphic that's used for the save game slots. We'll draw it 10 times stacked one upon the other on this loading and saving screen. Now just like our intro object, our main menu object will contain some states, but we'll use them a bit differently this time. We won't draw out a machine per se. Instead, we'll have a state that shows what the currently selected menu option is. We'll have 2 drawing layers. The lower layer are the backlights, and the top layers are sprite. The backlights will have 3 possible colors corresponding to the availability of the selection option. Black means the menu option is not available at all, maroon means it's available but it's not currently selected, and red means it's the current selection. Now of course we'll have fading based on changing selections too. Here are the tasks we'll cover in GameMaker. When we create the object, we'll register the keyboard, define those selection states, and declare a few variables such as fading alphas. We'll also want a room state event this time because we're going to have to set the references to the global objects. Now I do this in the room start event because I'm not sure that GameMaker can guarantee the creation order unless I push it out to this point. And the menu options will also depend on references such as current mission. Now the step event looks the same as always, process input and fading. Destroy looks like most other objects we've made. Drawing will include the backlight, the sprite overlay, and overall screen fading for transitions. Let's talk about the two child objects that our main menu object will create. One of them handles game loading and game saving, and the other is a pop-up that provides a visual warning. The load and save object has to handle the keyboard and be aware of the current game object in order to display saving and loading options. It also has to know whether we're loading or saving the game at all. A flag will hold that and will be passed from the caller object. The step event looks typical, processing input and fading. Destroying requires unregistering the keyboard. And the draw event will draw the headers, the sprite slots, and text over top of the slots. Finally, the main menu pop-up will look almost exactly the same, except now the main menu object will pass an indicator of which pop-up message we want to display. The remainder of the object looks like everything else we've done: processing input, fading, sprite drawing, and keyboard deregistration. So this is the design that will carry us to the mission. We introduce 3 objects. The main menu object initializes the room and handles the transition to the next room. The 2 other objects handle certain player interactions within the room. Next time we'll program up these objects and have a prototype that's ready to jump to the fun part of the game.